The sun has set over Chang'an. The year is 742 in the reign of Emperor Xuanzong, and the capital of the Tang dynasty does not sleep when darkness falls. You are standing at the eastern gate of the outer city wall, where the last of the day's merchants are passing through before the drums sound. The air is thick with dust from 10,000 footsteps, and beneath it the smell of horse dung, sesame oil, and something sweet you cannot name. The gate closes behind you with a sound like distant thunder. Iron and wood, thick as a man is tall. You hear the bolt slide into place. The outer city is sealed now until dawn. But the inner wards, the Fang, the walled neighborhoods that divide Chang'an into a grid, those gates will remain open for 2 more hours. You have until the second drum to reach your destination. You walk west along a wide avenue, wider than any road you have seen. 40 paces from edge to edge, they say, though you have never counted. The surface is packed earth, rutted from cartwheels, and in the failing light you can still make out the parallel grooves where the wheels of the grain wagons ran this morning. On either side, drainage ditches carry the day's refuse toward the channels that will take it, eventually, to the river. The street is not empty. It is never empty. To your left, a man is leading a donkey loaded with bundled reeds. The donkey's hooves make a soft, irregular rhythm on the packed earth. To your right, 2 women walk together, their heads covered, carrying baskets. You cannot see what is inside. One of them is speaking in a low voice. The other laughs, a short, sharp sound, and then they are past you. Lanterns are being lit. Not everywhere. Lanterns are expensive, and oil is not cheap. But at the corners of certain streets, and outside the larger shops that line the avenue, you see them now. Small flames behind oiled paper, casting a yellow glow that does not reach far. The light makes the shadows deeper. You pass a wine shop. The door is open and you can see inside. Low tables, men sitting on mats, a woman moving between them with a ceramic flask. The sound of voices, not loud, but layered. Someone is singing or chanting. A single voice, rhythmic, and then it stops. You cannot tell if it was a song or a prayer. The smell of roasting meat reaches you. Mutton, you think, though it could be pork. There is a stand at the corner where a man is turning skewers over a brazier. The coals glow red in the dimness. He does not call out to you. He simply turns the skewers and the fat drips and hisses. You turn south into one of the narrower streets that lead between the Fang. The walls here are high, higher than 2 men standing, and made of tamped earth faced with brick at the base. They are the walls of the residential wards, and behind them are the houses and courtyards of those who live in this part of the city. You cannot see over them. You cannot see through them. The street between them is a canyon of shadow. There are fewer people here. A servant, perhaps, hurrying with a covered dish. A man on horseback, moving at a walk, the horse's breath visible in the cooling air. Autumn is coming. You can feel it in the temperature, in the way the warmth of the day is leaving the stones. You hear music. Faint, from somewhere behind the walls to your left. A string instrument, a pipa maybe, and a flute. The melody is slow, wandering. It does not resolve. You walk on, and the music fades. At the next intersection, there is a small shrine. Just a niche in the wall with a clay figure inside and a stick of incense burning in front of it. The incense smells of sandalwood. Someone has left a pair of oranges at the base of the figure. The oranges are small and slightly withered. The first drum sounds. A deep, resonant boom that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. It is the drum of the ward gates. You have 1 hour now. After the second drum, the gates of the Fang will close, and if you are caught in the streets after that, the night watch will stop you. They will ask your name, your business, your destination. They will ask to see your papers if you are a traveler. If you are a resident and you have no good reason to be out, they will fine you. If you are a stranger, they may take you to the ward office and hold you until morning. You walk faster now. Not running. Running draws attention, but with purpose. The street curves slightly, following the line of the ward wall, and ahead you see another lantern, this one hanging from a pole outside a gate. The gate is open. Beyond it, you can see a courtyard and the dark shapes of buildings. You pass through the gate into the courtyard. The air here is different, stiller, enclosed by walls on 3 sides. The courtyard is small, perhaps 20 paces across, paved with flat stones that have been worn smooth by decades of footsteps. In the center stands a single tree, its branches bare now in the cold of late autumn. A few leaves still cling to the highest branches, dark against the sky. The buildings that surround the courtyard are low, single-story structures with tiled roofs that curve slightly at the eaves. Paper screens cover the windows, and behind some of them you can see the faint glow of lamplight. This is a residential compound, home to perhaps 3 or 4 families. You can hear voices inside one of the buildings, a woman speaking, her tone patient, and a child's voice answering. The smell of cooking oil lingers in the air, though the evening meal is long finished. Somewhere nearby, someone is coughing, a dry, persistent sound that carries in the stillness. You cross the courtyard and step back out through a second gate on the far side. The street continues, narrower now, barely wide enough for 2 people to pass each other without turning sideways. The walls here are higher, and the overhanging eaves of the buildings almost meet above your head, blocking out what little moonlight there is. You walk in near darkness, one hand trailing along the wall to keep your bearings. The plaster is cold and slightly damp under your fingers. Ahead, you hear footsteps. Someone else is walking toward you, their pace steady and unhurried. You cannot see them yet, but you can hear the soft scuff of their shoes on the paving stones. You slow down, uncertain. In a moment, a figure emerges from the darkness. A man, middle-aged, wearing a plain robe and carrying a small bundle under one arm. He glances at you as he passes, his face expressionless, and then he is gone, his footsteps fading behind you. The street opens out again into a small square. This one is larger than the courtyard you passed through earlier, perhaps 50 paces across, and it is not entirely empty. A few people are still here, moving with the same quiet urgency you feel. A woman hurries past, her head covered with a shawl, a basket on her arm. 2 men stand near the edge of the square, speaking in low voices. One of them gestures toward the far end of the square, and the other nods and turns to leave. At the center of the square stands a well. It is a simple structure, a low stone wall surrounding a dark opening with a wooden frame above it and a rope hanging down into the depths. A wooden bucket sits on the edge of the well, half filled with water. Someone has left it there, perhaps intending to return for it before the gates close. The water is still, reflecting nothing. You cross the square and enter another street. This one is wider, and you realize you are approaching one of the main avenues that run through the ward. You can see it ahead, a broad street, perhaps 30 paces wide, lined with larger buildings. Some of these are shops, their fronts shuttered now, the wooden boards pulled down and locked. Others are the homes of wealthier families, with high walls and gates painted red or black. Lanterns hang outside some of these gates, their light casting long shadows across the street. The avenue is not empty. A few people are still moving along it, all of them walking quickly, all of them heading toward their own gates before the second drum sounds. You see a man leading a donkey, the animal's hooves clopping softly on the stones. The donkey is loaded with 2 large baskets, covered with cloth. The man does not look at you as he passes. He is focused on his destination, his face set in concentration. You turn onto the avenue and walk north. The buildings here are taller, some of them 2 stories, and the street is lined with trees. Willows, their long branches hanging down like curtains. In the summer, these trees would provide shade, but now they are bare, their branches swaying slightly in the cold wind that has begun to blow down the avenue. Ahead, you see the gate of the ward. It is a large structure, built of wood and stone, with a tiled roof and 2 heavy doors that stand open now. On either side of the gate, torches burn in iron brackets, their flames flickering in the wind. 2 men stand just inside the gate, both of them wearing the dark robes of the night watch. They are not stopping anyone yet, but they are watching, their eyes moving over each person who passes through. You walk toward the gate, keeping your pace steady. You do not want to draw attention. As you approach, one of the watchmen glances at you, his gaze lingering for a moment, and then he looks away. You pass through the gate and into the next ward. The streets here are narrower than the ones you have just left. The buildings press closer together, their walls rising on either side of you, and the light from the torches at the gate fades quickly behind you. For a moment, you walk in near darkness, your feet finding the uneven stones by memory more than sight. Then, ahead, you see the glow of another lantern, hanging from a wooden post at the corner where this street meets another. The light is dim, but it is enough to see by. You move toward it, and as you do, you begin to hear voices again, low, quiet, the sound of people who are trying not to be heard too clearly. You reach the corner and pause. To your left, the street continues deeper into the ward, lined with more houses, their doors closed, their windows shuttered. To your right, the street opens into a small square, and it is here that the voices are coming from. You turn right and step into the square. It is not large, perhaps 30 paces across, and it is surrounded on all sides by buildings. In the center of the square there is a well, its stone rim worn smooth by centuries of hands. A few people are gathered near the well, their figures dark against the faint light of a single lantern that hangs from a pole nearby. They are talking, their voices rising and falling, and as you approach, you catch fragments of their conversation. A woman is speaking, her voice sharp with frustration. She is saying something about the price of rice, how it has gone up again, how her family cannot afford it. A man responds, his tone weary, saying that it is the same everywhere, that the merchants are hoarding grain, waiting for the price to rise even higher. Another voice joins in, younger, angrier, saying that the officials do nothing, that they take their bribes and look the other way. You do not stop to listen. You walk past the well, keeping to the edge of the square, and as you do, one of the figures near the well turns to look at you. It is a man, middle-aged, his face lined and tired. He watches you for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, and then he turns back to the others. You continue walking, leaving the square behind, and the voices fade once more into the background hum of the city. The street ahead of you slopes downward, and you follow it, your steps careful on the uneven stones. The air here smells different, damper, heavier, with a faint sourness that you recognize as the smell of the canal. You are moving toward the water now, toward the part of the ward where the merchants and laborers live, where the houses are smaller and the streets are dirtier. As you descend, the buildings on either side of you change. The walls are no longer painted, no longer decorated with carved lintels or hanging lanterns. They are plain, built of rough brick and wood, and many of them are in disrepair. You see cracks in the walls, tiles missing from the roofs, doors that hang crooked on their hinges. The street itself is narrower here, and the stones underfoot are slick with something you do not want to think about too closely. You pass a doorway, and from inside you hear the sound of a child crying, a thin, exhausted sound that goes on and on. A woman's voice murmurs something, low and soothing, but the crying does not stop. You keep walking. A few paces further, you pass another doorway, and this one is open. Inside, you can see the flicker of a small fire, and around it, 3 men are sitting on the floor, their faces lit by the flames. They are playing a game, their hands moving quickly, slapping tiles down onto the ground between them. One of them laughs, a short, harsh sound, and another curses. They do not notice you. The street ends at the canal. You step out onto a narrow stone embankment, and before you the water stretches away into the darkness. The canal is not wide, perhaps 10 paces across, but it is deep, and the water moves slowly, its surface black and smooth. On the far side, you can see the shapes of more buildings, their outlines barely visible against the night sky. A few lights burn in windows over there, small and distant. The smell of the water is strong here, a mix of mud and rot and something else, something metallic. You stand at the edge of the embankment and look down. The water laps gently against the stone, and in the faint light from a lantern somewhere behind you, you can see things floating on the surface. Bits of wood, scraps of cloth, other things you cannot identify. To your right, a wooden bridge crosses the canal. It is a simple structure, just planks laid across stone pilings with no railing. You walk toward it, your footsteps echoing softly on the stone. As you reach the bridge, you see a figure sitting at the near end, hunched over, wrapped in a ragged blanket. The figure does not move as you approach, and for a moment you think it might be asleep. But then, as you step onto the bridge, the figure shifts slightly, and you see a hand emerge from the blanket, palm up, held out toward you. You do not stop. You walk past, your feet finding the center of the planks, and behind you the hand withdraws. The bridge creaks under your weight. The wood is old, worn smooth by years of feet crossing in both directions, and in the darkness you can feel the slight give of the planks, the way they shift just enough to remind you that the canal is below. The water makes no sound. It simply sits there, black and still, reflecting nothing. On the far side of the bridge, the street continues, narrower now, the buildings pressing closer together. The smell changes here. Less smoke, more rot. Something organic. Something left too long in the heat of the day and now cooling in the night air. You pass a doorway where a woman stands, leaning against the frame. She does not call out to you. She simply watches, her face half in shadow, her arms crossed over her chest. Her robe is dark, patched at the shoulder, and her hair is pulled back tightly, tied with a strip of cloth. She is not young, but not old either. Her eyes follow you as you walk past, and you feel the weight of her gaze even after you have moved beyond her doorway. Behind her, inside the room, you can hear voices, low, murmuring, the sound of men talking over something, though you cannot make out the words. Further along, the street bends slightly to the left, and as you round the corner, you see a small courtyard opening up on your right. It is not much, just a square of packed earth surrounded by low walls, with a single tree growing in the center. The tree is old, its trunk thick and gnarled, its branches spreading out overhead, though in the darkness you can barely see them. Beneath the tree, a group of men sit on low stools, gathered around a small table. They are playing a game. You can see the pieces laid out on the board, though you cannot tell what kind of game it is from this distance. One of the men leans forward, moves a piece, and the others lean in to look. No one speaks. The only sound is the soft click of the piece being set down, and then the faint rustle of cloth as one of the men shifts his weight. You do not enter the courtyard. You keep walking, and the men do not look up. The street continues, and the buildings on either side grow taller, their upper stories leaning out over the street so that the sky above you narrows to a thin strip of darkness. The air feels heavier here, more enclosed. You can hear water dripping somewhere, not from the canal, but from above, from a roof or a gutter, the slow, steady drip of water falling onto stone. The sound is rhythmic, almost soothing, and you find yourself counting the drops as you walk. 1, 2, 3. Then the sound fades as you move past. Ahead, the street opens up again, and you see another canal crossing your path. This one is wider than the first, and there is a stone bridge here, arched and solid, with a low railing on either side. The bridge is lit by a single lantern hanging from a post at the near end, and in the light you can see the water below, moving slowly, dark and thick. The surface is smooth, unbroken, and as you step onto the bridge, you can see your own shadow cast down onto the water, long and distorted. You stop in the middle of the bridge and look down. The water is deeper here, or at least it seems that way. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot see anything beneath the surface. Just the dark and the faint reflection of the lantern, a small point of light wavering on the water. You hear footsteps behind you. Slow, deliberate. You do not turn around. You keep your eyes on the water, and the footsteps grow closer, then stop. Someone is standing behind you, just a few paces away. You can hear them breathing, slow and steady. You wait. The person does not speak. After a moment, the footsteps resume, moving past you, crossing the bridge and then fading into the darkness on the other side. You turn your head slightly and catch a glimpse of a figure. Tall, wrapped in a long robe, a hood pulled up over the head. The figure does not look back. It simply walks on, and then it is gone. You leave the bridge and continue along the street. The buildings here are different, older perhaps, or simply less maintained. The walls are cracked, the plaster peeling away in places to reveal the brick beneath. Some of the doorways are boarded up, the wood dark and warped. Others stand open, black rectangles leading into rooms you cannot see. You pass one such doorway and hear a sound from within, a cough, low and wet, followed by a long silence. You do not stop. You keep walking, and the sound does not repeat. The street narrows again, and the ground beneath your feet changes. The stone gives way to packed earth, uneven and rutted, and you have to watch your step to avoid twisting an ankle. The smell of smoke returns, stronger now, and you see a faint glow ahead, orange and flickering. As you draw closer, you see a small fire burning in a metal brazier set against the wall of a building. The fire is low, just a few coals glowing in the darkness, and beside it, an old man sits on a stool, his hands held out toward the warmth. He does not look up as you approach. His face is lined, his beard long and gray, and his eyes are fixed on the fire. You walk past him, and he does not move. The fire crackles softly, and a thin trail of smoke rises into the night air, disappearing into the darkness above. The alley narrows ahead. You follow it without thinking, drawn by habit now, or perhaps by some quality of the darkness itself. The way it thickens between these walls, the way the cold presses in from both sides. The packed earth is softer here, slightly damp, and your footsteps make almost no sound. Somewhere above you, a roof tile shifts in a small wind, and the sound is sharp and brief, like a finger tapping on wood. Then it stops. The silence that follows is not empty. It breathes. A dog turns in its sleep somewhere behind a wall, and you hear the dry rustle of straw. A child coughs once, distant and muffled, and then is quiet. These sounds are not interruptions. They are the texture of the night itself, the city's slow exhale after the long effort of the day. You emerge from the alley into a slightly wider lane, and here the darkness is broken by a row of paper lanterns strung at uneven intervals between the eaves of two facing buildings. The lanterns are not bright. Their light is the color of old honey, warm and uncertain, and it falls in pools on the lane below, leaving long stretches of shadow between them. The paper is thin enough that you can see the flame inside each one. A small dark shape at the center of a pale glow, trembling with each small movement of the air. Beneath the third lantern, a woman sits on a low wooden bench outside a door. She is middle-aged, her hair wrapped and pinned, and she is working by the lantern light. In her hands is a length of cloth, and she pulls a needle through it with slow, even movements. She does not look up. The needle catches the light once, twice, and then she draws it through again. The thread she uses is dark. It might be black, it might be a deep indigo. And it disappears against the cloth between stitches, visible only when the lantern light catches it at a certain angle. You slow without meaning to. There is something absorbing in the steadiness of her movement, the way each pull of the thread is identical to the last. She has been sitting here a long time. The candle in the lantern above her has burned down by a quarter since she sat down, and the wax has guttered and reset along one side into a small white ridge. She has not moved except for her hands. The door behind her is closed. Whatever is behind it, a sleeping husband, a sleeping child, the ordinary furniture of a life, is on the other side of that wood, and she is out here in the light, working. The cloth, you notice, is part of a garment, though you cannot say what kind. The stitching she is adding runs along a seam at the collar. This is repair work, not decoration. Something has worn through or torn, and she is closing it. The gesture is ancient in the way that very ordinary things are ancient, not because it reaches back to any particular moment in history, but because it is the kind of thing that has been done in every generation, in every city, that has ever had needles and thread and cloth that wore thin at the edges. You pass her, and she does not look up, and then she is behind you. The lane bends, and the lanterns end with it. You are in darkness again. Real darkness, the kind that forces you to walk slowly and feel for the edge of the path with the outer rim of your foot. The cold has settled deeper since you left the wider streets. It sits in the folds of your clothing and presses against the backs of your hands. Somewhere to your left, water moves, a narrow channel perhaps, or a drainage cut, running along the base of a wall. You cannot see it. You can only hear it. A low, steady sound, patient and indifferent. The kind of sound that continues whether anyone is awake to hear it or not. A smell reaches you. Not smoke this time. Something different. Something fermented, sweet in an acidic way, faintly sharp at the back of the throat. Rice wine, perhaps, or the lees of it, poured out from somewhere and left to sour in the cold air. It is not unpleasant. It is the smell of a place where people have eaten and drunk and let the evidence of it settle into the ground, and the ground has taken it in. The lane opens again, not into a main road, but into a small enclosed courtyard, barely large enough for 6 people to stand in. On one side, a gate stands half open, its wooden planks split along one edge, the split so old that the wood inside has darkened to the same gray as the surface. Through the gap you can see another lane, another darkness. On the other side of the courtyard, a low building squats with its roof heavy and overhanging, and in one of its 2 windows a lamp burns behind a paper screen. The light through the screen is orange and faintly unsteady. A shadow moves across it. A slow, unhurried shape, a person standing and then sitting, and then is still. You stand in the courtyard for a moment. The cold is steady. The lamp in the window holds. Above the roof line, the sky has shifted. The clouds that have been hanging all evening are thinning in one quarter of the sky, and through the gap, just there, above the eastern edge of the rooftop, a few stars are visible, not many. 3, perhaps 4, too faint to name. They do not illuminate anything. They are simply present, the way very distant things are present, acknowledgeable but not reachable. The half-open gate creaks once in the wind. You step back toward the gate and pass through it into the lane. The wood scrapes faintly against the stone threshold as you push it wider. Behind you, the courtyard settles into stillness. The lamp in the window remains, a small fixed point, and then the lane bends and you lose sight of it. The lane here is narrower than the one you walked earlier. The walls on either side are close enough that you could touch both at once if you stretched your arms. The paving is uneven. Some stones are missing entirely, and in their place the ground is packed earth, slightly softer underfoot. You can feel the difference through your soles. There is no light here except what little comes from the sky, and that is not much. You move slowly, one hand trailing along the wall to your left. The plaster is cold and slightly damp, and in places it has crumbled away, leaving rough brick beneath. Ahead, the lane opens into a wider street. You can see the change in the quality of the darkness, less enclosed, more open to the sky. As you reach the junction, you hear voices. Not loud, but clear in the cold air. 2 men speaking in low tones. You cannot see them yet. Their voices come from somewhere to your right, perhaps 20 paces away. One of them laughs, a short, dry sound, more acknowledgement than amusement. The other says something you cannot make out, and then there is the sound of footsteps, deliberate and unhurried, moving away. You turn right and follow the wider street. The buildings here are taller, 2 stories in some cases, and the street itself is broader, wide enough for a cart, though there are no carts now. The paving is better maintained. The stones are larger, more evenly set, and the gaps between them are narrow. In the distance, perhaps 100 paces ahead, there is a faint glow. Not a single lamp, but the diffuse light of several sources gathered in one place. You walk toward it. As you draw closer, the glow resolves into individual points. There are 3 lamps, hung from poles set into the ground at the edge of what appears to be a small square. The square is not large, perhaps 30 paces across, and it is not empty. There are people here, not many, 5, perhaps 6. They are gathered near the center, standing in a loose group, and they are speaking quietly among themselves. You cannot hear what they are saying. One of them is holding something, a bundle of some kind wrapped in cloth. Another is gesturing with one hand, pointing toward the far side of the square. You stop at the edge of the square, just beyond the reach of the lamplight. The air here smells different. There is smoke, yes, but also something sharper. Vinegar, perhaps, or fermented grain. It is not unpleasant, but it is distinct. One of the lamps sways slightly in the wind, and the light shifts across the ground, catching the edges of the paving stones and the hems of the people's robes. Their robes are dark, gray or brown, it is hard to say in this light, and long, reaching nearly to the ground. One of the figures is shorter than the others, and you realize after a moment that it is a woman. She is standing slightly apart from the group, her arms folded across her chest, her head tilted as though listening. The man with the bundle says something, and the woman nods. She steps forward, takes the bundle from him, and turns toward the far side of the square. The others watch her go. She walks with a steady, measured pace, and, as she passes beneath one of the lamps, you see her face for a moment, middle-aged, perhaps older, with deep lines at the corners of her mouth. She does not look at you. She crosses the square and disappears into a narrow alley on the far side. The men remain. One of them shifts his weight from one foot to the other. Another pulls his robe tighter around his shoulders. They do not speak now. The silence stretches, and then one of them, the tallest, standing nearest to the center lamp, turns and walks toward the street you came from. The others follow, one by one, until the square is empty except for the lamps and the wind. You step into the square. The lamplight reaches you now, faint but present. The ground here is cleaner than the lanes, swept recently, perhaps earlier in the evening. There are no leaves, no scattered straw. In the center of the square, there is a low stone platform, rectangular, perhaps 2 paces long and 1 wide. Its surface is smooth, worn by years of use. You do not know what it is for. There are no markings on it, no offerings, no signs of recent activity. It is simply there, a piece of the square's architecture, functional and unremarked. The lamps creak faintly on their poles. The wind is picking up again. You turn from the platform and walk toward the far side of the square, where the lamplight thins and the buildings resume. The structures here are taller than those in the lanes, 2 stories, some of them, with narrow windows on the upper floors. Most of the windows are shuttered. A few show the faint glow of interior lamps, dim and orange, barely visible through the slats. You pass beneath one of these windows and hear, very faintly, the sound of a woman's voice. Not words, just the rhythm of speech, low and steady, as if she is speaking to a child or to someone who cannot answer. The sound fades as you move on. At the edge of the square, a narrow alley opens to your left. It is darker than the lanes you walked through earlier. No lamps here, only the residual glow from the square behind you. The walls on either side are close enough that you could touch both at once if you stretched your arms. The ground is uneven, sloping slightly downward. You step into the alley. The air here is cooler, damper. There's a smell of standing water, faint but persistent. Somewhere ahead, you hear the drip of water onto stone, irregular and slow. The alley curves gently to the right. As you follow it, the light from the square disappears entirely. You move by touch now, one hand brushing the wall to your right. The plaster is rough, cracked in places, and in one spot your fingers find a patch of exposed brick beneath. The dripping sound grows louder. You round the curve and see, a few paces ahead, a small courtyard. Not a square, just a widening of the alley, perhaps 3 paces across. In the center of the courtyard there is a stone basin, waist-high, fed by a thin stream of water that trickles from a spout set into the wall above. The water falls into the basin with a soft, rhythmic sound. The basin is full, nearly to the brim, and the overflow runs down a shallow channel cut into the ground, disappearing into a grate at the far end of the courtyard. You approach the basin. The water is clear, though you cannot see the bottom in this light. You dip your fingers into it. It is cold, colder than you expected, and very still except where the stream disturbs it. There is no one else here. The courtyard is silent except for the water. The walls around you are blank, no windows, no doors that you can see. This is a place for drawing water, nothing more. You withdraw your hand and shake the droplets from your fingers. They fall onto the stone at your feet and vanish into the dust. Beyond the courtyard, the alley continues, narrower now and darker still. You follow it. The walls press closer. The ground beneath your feet is damp here, slick in places, and you move carefully. The smell of water is stronger, mixed now with something else. Something organic, vegetable, the scent of decay held in check by the cold. You pass a doorway on your left, low and recessed, with a wooden door that is slightly ajar. There is no light inside. You do not stop. The alley opens suddenly onto another lane, wider than the one you left and better lit. There are lamps here, spaced at intervals along the walls, and the ground is paved with flat stones, uneven but solid. You step out into the lane and pause. To your right, the lane slopes upward, back toward the center of the district. To your left, it descends, curving out of sight. You turn left and begin to walk downhill. The buildings here are different. Older, perhaps, or simply less maintained. The plaster on the walls is stained and peeling, and in places the wooden beams beneath are visible, dark and weathered. Some of the doorways are covered with cloth rather than doors, and the cloth moves faintly in the wind. You pass one such doorway and catch a glimpse of the interior. A single room, lit by a small oil lamp on a low table. There is a man sitting on the floor, his back to the doorway, bent over something you cannot see. He does not turn as you pass. Further down the lane, you hear voices again. 2 men, speaking in low tones, their words indistinct. You cannot see them yet. The lane curves to the right, and as you round the curve, you see them standing near a doorway on the left side of the lane. One of them is holding a lamp, a small clay lamp with a single flame. The other is gesturing with his hands, pointing at something on the ground. They do not notice you. You slow your pace and move to the right side of the lane, keeping to the shadows. As you draw closer, you see what they are looking at. A wooden crate, overturned, its contents spilled onto the stones. Vegetables, mostly, turnips perhaps, or radishes, pale and round in the lamplight. One of the men crouches and begins to gather them, placing them back into the crate. The other watches, still holding the lamp. You pass them without speaking. Neither looks up. The lane continues ahead of you, narrower now, the walls pressing closer on both sides. The smell of the spilled vegetables lingers for a moment, earth and dampness, and then fades as you move forward. The stones beneath your feet are uneven here, worn smooth in some places, cracked and jutting in others. You step carefully, watching where you place each foot. The darkness is thicker in this part of the lane. No lamps hang from the walls. No light spills from doorways. The houses here are shuttered tight, their windows covered with wooden panels or oiled paper that shows no glow from within. You hear water ahead. Not the sound of a fountain or a well, but something quieter. A trickle, a slow drip. As you walk, the sound grows louder and you see it. A narrow channel cut into the left side of the lane, no wider than your hand, running along the base of the wall. Water moves through it, dark and sluggish, carrying with it the smell of waste and old food. This is one of the drainage channels that runs through the city, carrying refuse from the houses down toward the river. In daylight, you would see the filth more clearly. At night, you only smell it and hear the slow movement of water over stone. The lane opens slightly, widening into a small courtyard no larger than a room. 3 lanes meet here, each one leading off into darkness. In the center of the courtyard stands a stone marker, waist-high, its surface carved with characters you cannot read in the dim light. You stop and look at it. The stone is old, its edges rounded by weather and time. Someone has placed a small offering at its base. A handful of grain, perhaps, or seeds. You cannot tell. The courtyard is silent. No one is here. You choose the lane to the left and continue. This lane is wider than the last, wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side without touching the walls. The houses here are taller, 2 stories, their upper floors jutting out slightly over the lane, supported by wooden beams. You walk beneath them, and the darkness deepens. The air is cooler here, trapped between the walls, and you pull your robe tighter around your shoulders. Ahead, you see a faint glow. Not a lamp, but something softer, more diffuse. As you draw closer, you see that it comes from a doorway on the right side of the lane. The door is open, just slightly, and through the gap you see the flicker of a fire inside. You slow your pace and glance through the opening as you pass. Inside, you see a small room, its walls bare earth, its floor packed dirt. A fire burns in a shallow pit in the center of the room, and around it sit 3 figures, 2 women and a child. One of the women is stirring something in a pot suspended over the fire. The other is holding the child, a boy, perhaps 3 or 4 years old, wrapped in a thin blanket. The child is asleep, his head resting against the woman's shoulder. The woman stirring the pot looks up as you pass, and for a moment your eyes meet. She does not smile. She does not speak. She simply looks at you, her face shadowed and tired, and then returns her attention to the pot. You continue walking. The lane curves again, this time to the left, and as you round the curve, you hear voices ahead. Not the low murmur of conversation, but something louder, sharper. Laughter, perhaps, or argument. You cannot tell. The voices grow louder as you walk, and then you see them. A group of men, 5 or 6, standing in the middle of the lane. They are gathered around something on the ground, and as you approach, you see that it is a game of some kind. Small wooden pieces are scattered on the stones, and one of the men is crouched, moving a piece with his hand. The others watch, some standing, some squatting on their heels. One of them holds a cup, and as you draw closer, you smell wine, sour and strong. They notice you as you approach. One of them, A man with a thin beard and a cap pulled low over his forehead looks up and watches you. He does not speak. He does not move. He simply watches. You nod slightly as you pass, a gesture of acknowledgement, and he nods in return. The others do not look up. They are absorbed in the game, their attention fixed on the wooden pieces and the movements of the man crouched on the ground. You pass them and continue down the lane, and behind you the voices resume. Quieter now, the laughter softer. The lane narrows again, and the walls close in. You are deep in the city now, far from the main streets, far from the markets and the temples. Here, the night is its own world, separate from the day. The people who move through these lanes at this hour are not the merchants and officials you see in daylight. They are the ones who work when others sleep, who live in the spaces between the city's public face and its hidden interior. You are one of them now, for this hour, for this walk. The lane opens into a small courtyard, barely wider than the alley itself. A single lantern hangs from a wooden post, its light dim and flickering. Beneath it, a woman sits on a low stool, her hands moving steadily over a piece of cloth stretched across a frame. She is embroidering, her needle catching the light as it rises and falls. The thread is dark. You cannot tell the color in this light, and the pattern she works is invisible to you, but her hands know it. They move without hesitation, pulling the thread through, knotting it, moving to the next stitch. She does not look up as you pass. Her face is turned down toward her work, her expression hidden in shadow. The courtyard smells of damp stone and old wood, and somewhere nearby, water drips steadily, a slow rhythm that matches the movement of her hands. You leave the courtyard and enter another lane, this one even narrower than the last. The walls are close enough that you could touch both sides if you stretched your arms. The ground is uneven, the stones worn smooth in some places, cracked and broken in others. You step carefully, feeling your way as much as seeing it. The darkness here is thicker, the lanterns fewer. Ahead, a doorway stands open, and from inside comes the sound of voices, low and indistinct. You slow as you approach, and the voices resolve into words. Two men are speaking, their tones measured, deliberate. One voice is older, rougher. The other is younger, more careful. They are discussing something. A debt, perhaps, or a transaction. The words are too quiet to make out clearly, but the rhythm of the conversation is familiar. One man speaks, the other listens, then responds. There is no anger in their voices, no urgency. This is business conducted in the hours when business is not supposed to be conducted. You pass the doorway without looking in, and the voices fade behind you. The lane turns again, and you find yourself at the edge of a small open space, not quite a square, not quite a courtyard. A few buildings face onto it, their doors closed, their windows dark. In the center of the space, a fire burns in a shallow pit, the flames low and steady. Around it, 3 figures sit on the ground, their backs to you. They are warming themselves, their hands held out toward the fire. One of them is speaking, his voice a low murmur, and the others listen without interrupting. You cannot hear what he is saying, but the tone is that of a story being told, something recounted rather than discussed. The fire casts long shadows across the ground, and the figures are silhouettes against the light. You stand at the edge of the space for a moment, watching, and then you move on. They do not turn to look at you. They are absorbed in the fire, in the story, in the warmth. The lanes continue, winding deeper into the city. You pass more doorways, more courtyards, more small spaces where people gather in the night. A man carries a bundle of firewood on his back, his steps slow and heavy. A woman pours water from a jar into a basin, the sound of it splashing loud in the quiet. Two children run past you, their feet bare, their laughter sudden and bright, and then they are gone, disappearing into a doorway before you can see their faces. The city at night is not empty. It is full of small movements, small sounds, small lives being lived in the hours when the gates are closed and the streets are dark. You turn into another lane, and the smell of cooking reaches you again, different this time. Not the rich, oily smell of fried dough, but something sharper, more pungent, garlic, perhaps, or fermented vegetables. The smell comes from a doorway to your left, and as you pass you see a woman crouched over a small brazier, stirring something in a pot. The light from the coals illuminates her face, and she looks up as you pass, her eyes meeting yours for a moment. She does not smile, does not speak. She simply looks, and then she returns to her work, her hand moving the spoon through the pot in slow, steady circles. The smell follows you as you continue down the lane, fading gradually until it is gone. The night is deepest now, the hours between midnight and dawn when even the restless sleep in the city is as quiet as it will ever be. The lanes are darker, the lanterns fewer. You walk more slowly, your steps careful on the uneven stones. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, twice, then falls silent. The sound echoes off the walls and fades into nothing. You are alone in the lane now, no other figures visible ahead or behind. The city feels vast around you, a labyrinth of walls and doorways and hidden courtyards, and you are a single point moving through it, following the path wherever it leads. You turn a corner and the lane opens slightly, widening into a small square where 3 streets meet. In the center stands a stone well, its rim worn smooth by centuries of hands drawing water. The bucket hangs motionless on its rope. No one is here. The square is empty, the surrounding buildings dark and silent. You pause at the edge of the well and look down into it. The water is far below, invisible in the blackness, but you can smell it. Cool and faintly mineral, the scent of deep earth. Somewhere beneath the city, springs feed this well, as they have fed it since before anyone now living was born. You move on, leaving the square behind. The lane narrows again, the walls pressing close on either side. The stones beneath your feet are older here, more uneven, worn into shallow grooves by the passage of countless footsteps. You pass a doorway, where a single stick of incense burns in a small holder mounted to the wall. The smoke rises straight up in the still air, thin and pale. No light comes from within. The incense is an offering, left to burn through the night for reasons you cannot know. Protection, perhaps. Gratitude. A prayer for the dead. The smoke follows you for a few steps, then fades. The lane bends and you follow it, your hand brushing the wall to steady yourself in the darkness. The plaster is cool and slightly damp. You can hear water now, a faint trickling sound somewhere ahead. As you walk, the sound grows clearer. You round another corner and find a narrow channel cut into the stone at the base of the wall, no wider than your hand. Water flows through it, dark and quick, carrying away the day's waste toward the river beyond the city walls. The channel runs the length of the lane, disappearing into a grate at the far end. You step over it carefully and continue. Ahead, a figure emerges from a doorway. An old man, bent and slow, carrying a small oil lamp. The flame flickers as he moves, casting his shadow long against the wall. He does not look at you. He shuffles across the lane and disappears into another doorway, the light vanishing with him. For a moment, the lane is darker than before, your eyes adjusting again to the absence of the flame. Then the darkness settles, and you can see once more. You pass a workshop, its door half open. Inside, the faint glow of embers in a forge. The smith is not working now, but the fire has not been allowed to die completely. It will be easier to revive in the morning. The smell of hot metal and coal dust lingers in the doorway. You can see the shapes of tools hanging on the wall, hammers and tongs, their edges catching the faint red light. A bellows leans against the wall, its leather cracked and stained. The floor is covered in a fine layer of ash and metal filings. You move on, and the glow fades behind you. The lane climbs slightly, rising toward the northern wall of the city. Your legs feel the incline, the effort of the ascent after so many hours of walking. The air is cooler here, a faint breeze moving down from the hills beyond the wall. You can smell earth and grass, the scent of the countryside carried on the wind. The city ends somewhere ahead, its northern edge marked by the wall and the gate that will open again at dawn. But you are not there yet. The lane continues, winding between the last rows of houses, the buildings smaller here, simpler, their walls unplastered brick. You pass a courtyard where a tree grows, its branches spreading over the wall into the lane. The leaves are dark and still. Beneath the tree, a stone bench, empty. The courtyard is silent, no light visible within the house. You can see the faint outline of a well in the corner, its wooden cover closed. The tree is old, its trunk thick and gnarled, its roots pushing up through the paving stones. It has stood here longer than the house, longer than the lane itself, perhaps. The city grew around it, and it remains. The lane turns again, and you follow it, your steps steady and unhurried. The night is not yet over. The hours stretch ahead, dark and quiet, and the city sleeps around you, its 10,000 lives suspended in the stillness. You walk on alone, the only sound your footsteps on the stone. The lane narrows further, the walls pressing closer on either side. The stone beneath your feet is worn smooth here, polished by centuries of passing. You can feel the slight depression in the center where countless footsteps have traced the same path, year after year, generation after generation. The air is cooler in this narrow passage, trapped between the high walls, and it carries the faint smell of damp earth and old wood. You emerge into a small square, no larger than a modest courtyard. 3 lanes meet here, converging at odd angles. In the center stands a stone marker, waist-high, its surface carved with characters so weathered they are barely legible. You pause beside it, running your fingers over the worn stone. The characters speak of boundaries, of districts, of administrative divisions that meant something once to officials who are long dead. The stone is cold to the touch, and slightly rough where the rain has eaten away at its surface over the years. A dog lies sleeping against the base of the marker, its body curled tight, its breathing slow and even. It does not stir as you pass. Its fur is matted and dirty, the color indistinct in the darkness. A street dog, one of hundreds that roam the city, scavenging what they can from the refuse heaps and the leavings of the markets. By day they are wary, quick to flee from a thrown stone or a shouted curse. By night they sleep where they can, claiming whatever shelter the city offers. You take the leftmost lane, following it as it slopes gently downward. The houses here are older, their walls leaning slightly inward, their roof lines sagging. You can see where repairs have been made over the years. New bricks patched into old walls, wooden beams replaced and fitted imperfectly into ancient frames. The city is layered this way, built and rebuilt, repaired and reinforced, each generation adding to what came before without ever fully erasing it. A window stands open in one of the houses, a rare sight at this hour. You can see nothing within, only darkness, but you can hear the faint sound of breathing, slow and rhythmic. Someone sleeps there, the window left open to catch whatever breeze might stir in the night. The sound is intimate, private, and you move past quickly, your footsteps soft on the stone. The lane opens onto a wider street, one you recognize now. You have circled back, though not to where you began. This is the street that runs parallel to the canal, 1 block inland. By day, it is busy with carts and porters, with merchants moving goods between the warehouses and the markets. By night, it is empty, a long corridor of shuttered shops and silent workshops. You walk along it slowly, looking at the buildings as you pass. Here is a dyer's shop, its door marked with the faded remnants of blue and red pigment, stains that have seeped into the wood and will not wash away. Here is a carpenter's workshop, its windows barred with iron, the smell of sawdust still faint in the air. Here is a shop that sells paper and ink, its sign hanging crooked from a single chain, the characters painted in black on white wood. The street curves slightly, following the contour of the land, and you follow it. The buildings here are taller, 3 stories in some cases, their upper floors jutting out over the street, supported by wooden brackets. The overhangs create a kind of tunnel, a covered passage where the moonlight does not reach. You walk through this darkness, your hand trailing along the wall to guide you, feeling the rough texture of the brick, the occasional smoothness of a wooden door frame. You emerge from the covered section into moonlight again. Ahead, the street widens into a small marketplace, empty now, its stalls dismantled for the night. The ground is littered with scraps, vegetable leaves, bits of straw, a broken basket lying on its side. By dawn, the vendors will return, setting up their stalls in the same positions they have occupied for years, calling out their wares in voices hoarse from use. But now there is only silence, and the faint rustle of something small moving through the debris. A rat, perhaps, or a cat on the hunt. You cross the marketplace slowly, your footsteps echoing slightly in the open space. On the far side, another lane opens, darker and narrower than the others. You hesitate for a moment, then step into it, leaving the marketplace behind. The lane is barely wide enough for 2 people to pass. The walls press close on either side, and the moonlight reaches only the upper edges of the rooftops, leaving the ground in near total darkness. You move slowly, one hand trailing along the wall to keep your bearings. The brick is cool and slightly damp, as if the night air has condensed against it. Somewhere ahead, you hear the faint sound of water, a slow, irregular dripping, a gutter, perhaps, or a cistern leaking into the alley below. The smell here is different, sharper. The scent of human waste mingles with something sour and fermented, and beneath it all, the faint metallic tang of old blood. This is where the butchers throw their scraps, where chamber pots are emptied into the drainage channels that run beneath the paving stones. In daylight, the city's sanitation workers, men employed by the district magistrate, would come through with buckets and brooms, clearing the worst of it. But at night, the alley belongs to the rats and the flies, and to anyone desperate or foolish enough to walk through it. You pass a doorway set low into the wall, its wooden frame warped with age. A faint light flickers inside, a single oil lamp perhaps, or the dying embers of a cooking fire. You catch a glimpse of movement through the gap beneath the door, a shadow shifting, the edge of a foot withdrawing. Someone is awake in there, listening to your footsteps, waiting for you to pass. You do not stop. In a city this crowded, privacy is a luxury few can afford, but the unspoken rule is clear. You do not look too closely into another's home, and they do not question your presence in the street. The lane curves slightly, and the sound of dripping water grows louder. You round the corner and find the source, a stone basin set into the wall, fed by a bamboo pipe that juts out at shoulder height. Water trickles from the pipe into the basin, then overflows onto the ground, forming a small puddle that reflects the faint glow of the sky above. This is one of the city's public water sources, maintained by the local guild and available to anyone who needs it. During the day, there would be a line of people here. Servants filling jars, laborers washing their hands and faces, children splashing each other and laughing. Now it is deserted. You cup your hands beneath the pipe and let the water pool in your palms. It is cold and clean, tasting faintly of stone. You drink, then splash a little on your face, feeling the chill against your skin. As you straighten, you notice something carved into the wall beside the basin. You lean closer, squinting in the dim light. It is a line of characters, scratched into the brick with a sharp tool, a knife, perhaps, or a nail. The strokes are uneven, the work of someone who could write but was not practiced at it. You trace the characters with your finger, sounding them out silently. It is a name, followed by a date. Someone marking their presence here, leaving a small record of themselves in a city that will forget them soon enough. Beneath the name, another line. I was here. I lived. You step back, letting your hand fall. The water continues to drip into the basin, steady and indifferent. You leave the basin behind and continue down the lane. The walls begin to change. The brick gives way to wood, and the buildings grow older, their frames sagging slightly, their roofs patched with mismatched tiles. This is one of the city's poor districts, where families live 3 or 4 to a room, where the rent is paid in copper cash and the landlords rarely visit. The air smells of smoke and sweat, and the faint sweetness of cheap incense burned to cover worse odors. You pass a window covered with oiled paper, glowing faintly from within. Through the paper, you can see the silhouette of a woman sitting on the floor, her head bowed, her hands moving in some repetitive task. Sewing, perhaps, or sorting grains. She does not look up as you pass. The lane opens suddenly into a small courtyard, shared by several buildings. In the center, a tree grows, a persimmon, its branches heavy with fruit that will not ripen for another month. Beneath the tree, a low stone bench, worn smooth by years of use. You sit for a moment, letting the weight leave your legs. The courtyard is quiet, but not silent. From one of the buildings, you hear the soft murmur of voices, a man and a woman, speaking too low for you to make out the words. From another, the thin wail of an infant, quickly hushed. The sounds of a city that never fully sleeps, even in the deepest hours of the night. You rise and cross the courtyard, passing beneath the persimmon tree. On the far side, Another lane opens, leading deeper into the district. The lane narrows again, the walls pressing close on either side. The air here is cooler, damper. You are moving toward water. Not the river itself, but one of the canals that thread through this part of the city, carrying waste away and bringing fresh water in from the hills beyond the walls. You hear it before you see it. The soft trickle of water over stone, the occasional splash of something, a rat perhaps, or a fish that has found its way in from the river. The canal runs along the left side of the lane, a narrow channel cut into the stone, no wider than your arm is long. The water is dark, reflecting nothing, but it moves steadily, purposefully, as it has moved for decades. A bridge crosses the canal, not a grand structure, just 3 flat stones laid across the gap, their surfaces slick with moss. You step carefully, feeling the stone shift slightly beneath your weight. On the far side, the lane opens into a wider street, and here the night feels different. There are more people, not many, but enough that you are no longer alone. A man passes you, walking quickly, his head down, a bundle of something, cloth maybe, or paper, tucked under one arm. He does not acknowledge you. A moment later, 2 women appear, walking side by side, their voices low and urgent. One of them laughs, a short, sharp sound that cuts through the quiet, and the other shushes her. They turn down a side street and are gone. You continue along the main street, following the faint glow of lanterns that mark the way. The buildings here are taller, 3 stories in some places, their upper floors jutting out over the street, creating a tunnel of shadow. From one of the upper windows you hear music, a pipa, its strings plucked slowly, hesitantly, as if the player is still learning the melody. The notes hang in the air for a moment, then fade. You pass a doorway where a man sits on the threshold, smoking a pipe. The smell of tobacco drifts toward you, sweet and acrid. He watches you as you pass, his eyes half closed, but he says nothing. The street curves to the right, and you follow it, your footsteps echoing softly against the walls. Ahead, you see a small shrine set into the wall, a niche carved into the stone, no larger than a man's torso. Inside, a clay figure sits cross-legged, its features worn smooth by time and weather. Before it, a small dish holds the remains of an offering, rice perhaps, or fruit, now dried and shriveled. A single stick of incense burns in a holder, its smoke rising in a thin, wavering line. Someone has been here recently, within the last hour. You pause, watching the smoke, and for a moment the street feels less empty. You move on. The buildings begin to change again. Fewer residences now, more workshops and storerooms. You pass a carpenter's shop, its door open just enough to reveal the shapes of tools hanging on the wall inside. Saws, chisels, planes, all arranged with care. The smell of wood shavings lingers in the doorway. Next to it, a dyer's workshop, its walls stained with streaks of indigo and madder red. The smell here is sharper, chemical, the residue of the day's work still hanging in the air. You do not linger. The street widens further, and you realize you are approaching one of the district's main thoroughfares. Even at this hour, it is not entirely deserted. A cart stands at the side of the road, its wheels chalked with stones, its bed empty. Nearby, a man crouches beside a small fire, warming his hands. He looks up as you approach, his face shadowed, unreadable. You nod, and he nods back, a brief acknowledgement of shared presence in the night. You do not stop. The thoroughfare runs east to west, cutting through the district like a river. To your left, it leads toward the markets, now silent and shuttered. To your right, it climbs gently toward the higher ground where the wealthier families live, their compounds hidden behind high walls and iron gates. You turn right, following the upward slope. The air here is cleaner, less heavy with the smells of cooking and waste. The buildings are set farther back from the street, their courtyards larger, their walls higher. You pass a gate, lacquered wood, painted red, with brass fittings that gleam faintly in the lantern light. Beyond it, you hear the sound of water, a fountain, perhaps, or a small pond. The gate is closed, and you do not try to see beyond it. You walk on, the slope steepening slightly beneath your feet. The street narrows here, the walls pressing closer on either side. The lanterns are fewer, spaced farther apart, and the darkness between them feels thicker, more deliberate. This is a district that does not invite wandering. The families who live here value their privacy, and the architecture enforces it. You pass another gate, this one iron, its surface worked into a pattern of interlocking clouds. It is locked, and there is no light beyond it. The silence here is different from the silence of the lower streets. There, the quiet was temporary, a pause between the day's noise and the night's smaller sounds. Here, the silence feels permanent, as though it has been cultivated over generations. You hear footsteps behind you, soft and measured. You do not turn. The footsteps continue for a moment, then stop. You walk on. The street curves slightly to the left, following the contour of the hill. Ahead, you see a small shrine set into the wall, a niche carved into the stone, no larger than a man's torso. Inside, a clay figure sits cross-legged, its features worn smooth by time and weather. A single stick of incense burns in a holder before it, the smoke rising in a thin, wavering line. Someone has been here recently. You pause, looking at the figure. Its hands rest on its knees, palms upward. Its face is calm, expressionless. You do not know which deity it represents, or whether it represents a deity at all. It might be an ancestor, a local spirit, a guardian of the district. The incense smells of sandalwood, faint and clean. You move on. The street levels out, and the walls on either side grow taller still. You pass a compound whose gate stands open, not wide, but enough to see through. Inside, a courtyard paved with smooth stones. A tree grows in the center, its branches spreading wide, its leaves dark against the sky. Beneath it, a stone bench. No one sits there now. The courtyard is empty, but it does not feel abandoned. It feels waiting. You do not enter. The gate, though open, is not an invitation. The street turns again, this time more sharply, and you follow it. The air is cooler now, the breeze stronger. You are higher up, and the city spreads below you, invisible in the darkness but present in the sounds that rise from it. The distant bark of a dog, the creak of a cart, the murmur of voices too far away to distinguish. You pass a wall covered in ivy, the leaves rustling softly as the wind moves through them. The ivy is old, its stems thick as a man's wrist, and it has climbed high, nearly to the top of the wall. Behind the wall you hear nothing. No voices, no movement, no light. You walk on, and the street begins to descend again, curving back toward the lower districts. The walls grow shorter, the gates less imposing. You pass a small shop, its shutters closed, a sign hanging above the door. You cannot read it in the darkness, but you can see the shape of the characters, brushed in black ink on a wooden board. The shop sells something. Tea, perhaps, or paper, or cloth. It does not matter. It is closed now and will remain closed until morning. The street widens and you see ahead of you a small square open to the sky. In the center, a well. Around it, a low stone wall worn smooth by the hands of those who have leaned against it, drawing water, resting, talking. The square is empty now. You walk to the well and look down. The water is far below, a dark circle reflecting nothing. You hear it, though, a faint sound, the echo of depth. You do not draw water. You stand there for a moment, listening to the silence of the square, the silence of the well, the silence of the night around you. Then you turn and you walk on. The street leads south now, back toward the heart of the district, back toward the places where people still move, still speak, still live their small, necessary lives. The night is not over. There are hours yet before dawn. You pass a doorway where a single lamp still burns, and through the gap you see an old man seated on a low stool, his hands folded in his lap, his eyes open but unseeing. He is not asleep. He is simply waiting. For what, you do not know. Perhaps for nothing. Perhaps only for the night to pass. You do not disturb him. You walk on. The street widens again, and you find yourself at the edge of a small temple courtyard. The gate is open. Inside, the incense has burned down to ash, but the smell lingers, faint and sweet. A single bronze bell hangs from the eaves, motionless. No wind stirs it. No hand has touched it for hours. You step inside, your feet soft on the stone. The altar is bare except for a small wooden figure, worn smooth by touch, its features no longer clear. You do not know which deity it represents. Perhaps those who come here do not know either. Perhaps it does not matter. You stand before it for a moment, then you bow, once, briefly, not out of belief, but out of respect for the gesture itself, for the hands that have made it before you, for the quiet that fills this place. You leave the courtyard and return to the street. The air is cooler now. You feel it on your face, on your hands. The night is deepening. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, then falls silent. You pass another alley, narrower than the others, and you see at its end a faint glow. You walk toward it. The glow comes from a small brazier set on the ground outside a doorway. Beside it, a woman sits on a wooden stool, her hands working at something in her lap. You draw closer and see that she is mending a shoe, her needle moving slowly, carefully through the worn leather. She does not look up as you pass. She does not need to. She knows the sound of footsteps. She knows the rhythm of the night. You turn a corner, and the street opens into a wider avenue. Here, the houses are larger, their walls higher, their gates more solid. This is where the merchants live, the men who trade in silk and tea, in porcelain and jade. Their wealth is quiet, hidden behind walls, behind locked doors. You do not see it. You only sense it in the weight of the gates, in the silence that surrounds these houses. No one walks here. No one lingers. You pass through quickly, your footsteps echoing faintly against the stone. And then ahead, you see the first pale edge of light. Not the sun, not yet, but the sky beginning to change, the black softening to gray, the stars fading one by one. The night is ending. You feel it in the air, in the stillness that comes just before dawn, when the world holds its breath. You walk faster now, not hurrying, but moving with purpose, as if you too are part of this rhythm, this turning from dark to light. You pass the last of the houses and find yourself at the edge of the district, where the streets give way to open ground, to fields and gardens, to the river beyond. You stop and turn back, looking at the city behind you. The rooftops are dark shapes against the lightening sky. The streets are still empty. But you know that soon, very soon, the doors will open. The vendors will return to their stalls. The children will run through the alleys. The city will wake, and the night will be forgotten. But for now, in this moment, it is still night, and you have walked through it. You have seen what it holds, the quiet lives, the small labors, the waiting, the watching, the silence. You have walked among those who live in the hours when most are asleep, and you have seen that their world is no less real, no less full than the world of daylight. The sky grows lighter. You turn away from the city and walk toward the river. The water is dark and smooth, reflecting the last of the night. You stand at its edge and listen, the sound of the current steady and low, the sound of the city behind you beginning to stir, the sound of your own breath, slow and even. The night is over. The walk is done. You may close your eyes now.